Hello, everyone. I'm Eve Richards. Welcome back to another episode of the Discovery Pod with Eve. It's so great to be back in the studio here in Burbank. As many of you know, the Los Angeles area has been facing devastating fires that continue to rage on. From all of us here on the Discovery Pod with Eve, we are sending you our thoughts and prayers. Stay safe and be strong. We've got a very exciting show today. My co-host, Tess Broussard, is going to do the intro in a minute. So please make sure you watch this episode on the Discovery Pod with Eve's YouTube channel, or you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Tess, welcome back.
Hi, Eve. Nice to be back. I'm missing this. I love the podcast. It's great. I missed it so much. Even during the fires, I was thinking about Eve's podcast.
Oh, it's so good to have you back. You know, the holidays were just a few weeks away, but because of what's happening here in our community, it almost feels like it was eternity. So tell us, how are you okay? You and your daughter. I know you live in the hills. So how are you?
Well, I was very shocked. I had a lot of anxiety, as most people would when they look at the fire. I mean, when I hear a fire, I think, okay, it's a fire, and I'm sad, and I'm sorry to hear about the people's homes that got burned down and that were left without anything. But then when you actually see a fire, then you start panicking. Yes. Then I think you start, well, for me, I just had flashes of charred bones. I mean, charred houses. Then you're thinking, where am I going to live? Yeah. What happens if my house gets burned down? And then you've got children, you've got pets to worry about, you've got your partner to worry about. So it's kind of scary, and it's devastating and traumatic.
It is very, very, very traumatic. Honestly, I was telling this, a friend of mine had texted me. I had been away from LA for 3 weeks, gone. And a friend of mine texted me last Tuesday because I wasn't here in LA. And he was like, Eve, are you okay? Are you safe from the fires? Mm-hmm. I was so oblivious. And I said to him, what are you talking about? That's how clueless I was, because I don't watch the news. And then on Wednesday, when I was flying back home, and just before landing in LAX, I could see all the smoke. And it was so devastating to watch and to see. And I have to say, because I live alone, I have family in the Bay Area and back east, it's been very, very, very difficult. I have an aunt who lives in Pacific Palisades, and her house got burned. So again, praying for everybody out there. But we've got such an exciting show. Obviously, I'm wearing red because we're going into Valentine's Day, and this is our Valentine's episode. So, Tess, please go ahead and introduce our guests.
I would love to. Okay, so on today's episode of the Discovery Podcast with Eve, we have the honor of welcoming Kathryn Morrow. Hi, Kathryn. And she is a renowned marriage counselor, best-selling author, and the host of the acclaimed podcast, Connected Conversations. With a career spanning over a decade, Kathryn has dedicated her life to helping couples rediscover connection, heal emotional wounds, and navigate the challenges of modern relationships. We welcome Kathryn, and as Valentine's Day approaches, a time that celebrates love but can also magnify relationship struggles, Kathryn's wisdom is more relevant than ever. Today we'll dive into her groundbreaking book, her thought-provoking podcast, and her unique perspective on love, intimacy, and partnership. Okay, now, Kathryn, welcome, and thank you for joining us. Let's start by exploring what drives your incredible work. Eve?
And so, Kathryn, sorry, is that your spouse? We totally...
My husband.
Your husband. Yes. Hi, I'm sorry, what's your name?
My name is Cass.
Cass. Oh, wonderful. So it's Cass and Kathryn. So welcome you both.
Yes, welcome.
So, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us. Your book, The Art of Loving Through Change, has deeply resonated with readers. Can you share the personal or professional experiences that shaped the heart of this book?
So our podcast is actually Morrow Marriage, not Connected conversations.
Oh.
And our book is Behind the White Picket Fence and Disrupting Divorce. Those are the names of ours.
Two books,
Yes.
yeah.
2 books. Awesome.
Yes.
Great.
So can you tell us a little bit about your book and a little bit about those your 2 books?
Definitely. You want to go first? Tell them about yours?
Sure. Yeah. So in the work that we do, we split. So I work with men and my wife works with women. And so my book is called Disrupting Divorce, The New Man in It, Saving Struggling Sexist Toxic Marriages. The idea is, well, I tell men when they work with me or when they read the book, you're going to grow up real fast. So I show men how to show up as men, husbands, fathers, leaders in life. And the idea is to take responsibility for themselves and inspire their wife to, they create enough value where the wife would be crazy to leave them. We create a new marriage and their wife is invited to join.
And actually, a lot of women have thanked you for the book, saying now when they read it, they say, thank you. Now I understand my husband.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's written for men, but it's great for men. It's great for women. It's great for married people, unmarried people, all the struggles that people go through even before you're married, when you're dating. It's really good for anybody.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
And then my book is called Behind the White Picket Fence. And my business, so the women, there's my beautiful picture of the book. My program is geared towards women who are in emotionally abusive relationships, maybe struggling with a husband with narcissistic tendencies or traits, or full-blown narcissist, like my husband, healed and whole. He calls himself a self-aware, severe, managing narcissist. And so Behind the White Picket Fence is in conjunction with the White Picket Fence Project, showing women that they can have it all. So obviously in my program, there's going to be a lot more than what's in my book, but in my book, it's tangible strategies, teaching women how to diffuse conflict, how to communicate effectively, how to love more unconditionally, because in today's society, we're actually taught that love is conditional, not unconditional. And so we really teach empathy, and it's more of a workbook than an actual read.
Okay, I have a question here. What about people who are traumatized, not just from past, just not regular past relationships, with all the arguments and, unfair fighting, gaslighting? What about people who have been scammed? How do you tell your patients to go put their foot forward and not be scared of dating again?
Oh, this one?
Yeah, well, a lot of the women that I work with come with a lot of trauma, because most people, what do they say? You repeat the cycle. You date a version of the same man. And so people are often afraid to get into a new relationship. But the women that I'm working with are currently in relationships. And so what they're trying to do often is keep their family together. I work with a lot of women who are scared to separate because they have children and they don't want their emotionally abusive husband to raise the children to get 50% custody, and they're trying to figure out how to save their marriage. So I think if I thought about what I would say to someone, how to put their foot forward, I'd have to think about the women in my program that have ended up getting divorced. I have a very high success rate, but we have lost some marriages in the program. And those women, they learn to stand in their own strength. So when somebody works with me, I always say it's not about your husband. The things that I'm teaching you are about they're about you. How can you be proud of your responses and your reactions? How can you show empathy, compassion, no matter what someone is throwing at you? Because your empathy is not connected to your husband's narcissism. It's not connected to your husband's emotional abuse. Who do you want to be despite everything around you? So when someone comes out of my program, I would say about 90% of the women move forward in a marriage that is moving towards healing or healed. But we have a small percentage of women who do choose to get divorced or separated. And those women feel so much stronger because they can feel confident in who they've become. They can feel confident that they're no longer reacting. They can manage their emotions. They're not reactively abusive. Wow. They understand their triggers and their overwhelm, and they're able to mitigate and navigate that.
Tess, I would add to that. I would say, anybody that I'm speaking to, man or woman, if you've got trauma and you want to move forward, it's such an opportunity to learn how to love. Wow. On the flip side, anybody who's helping somebody who's engaged in a relationship, whether it's your marriage or whether it's maybe somebody like you're describing, perhaps is trying to get out there and get forward, it's such an opportunity to meet that person and to be able to come to a point where you can show them how to be loved in a way that they've never experienced love. And that's something that I learned myself from my wife.
Wow.
As a narcissist, I didn't have an idea what love meant at all, how to give it, how to receive it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
So in today's world of social media and digital connection, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to genuine intimacy in relationships? I mean, everything is just digital and social media, so there's a huge gap.
Yeah, I think that people dive so far into social media, down rabbit holes, whether it's to try to fill some of those, some of their own confidence, some of their own just feeling love and knowing how to love, trying to run, trying to hide. And then you start to go down rabbit holes when it comes to blame that I think it takes away from a person's identity. By the time we get into a relationship and we're really trying to work through the issues, I mean, it starts with all love and validation, always, right? We're available for each other. And then we start to escape when we don't feel like our needs are being met. And social media is a massive part of that. But I would tie that in with alcohol, Netflix, maybe somebody might work too much. Yeah. It doesn't matter. There's so many ways that somebody would just try to grab onto something that could make themselves feel better and then support their blame so that they don't have to take responsibility for themselves.
One of the things, going back to the comment you just made, Kath, earlier about a narcissist, and you referred to yourself as one. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's called the DSM, and you can take tests. If anybody wants to have some fun with this, go take some tests. Just Google it. And I check every box so that there's different levels, and Kathryn can speak more to it. But I checked every box, and now I am aware when things are happening. On a whole, we call it a turnaround time. Yeah. But then we teach reality checks, and Kathryn is a good reality check for me because I trust her. Yeah. But in the beginning, I did not. Right. And so same with the men that I work with or the women that Kathryn works with, we have to give the reality checks, or our coaches do. But yes, it's a lot of fun, but that's because I'm on the other side. So I love to challenge people when they say a narcissist can't change. Because
I like that.
So wait, you're saying that you've changed as a narcissist to now you're like non-narcissist, or you still have narcissistic tendencies?
And so you can't be cured of narcissism, but it's a lot of it's behavioral. So he referenced the DSM. So the DSM, for anybody who's interested, is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and you can look up narcissistic personality disorder. So there's a list of things that you need to check off to be classified as a narcissist. He checks off all of them. However, when you become aware, then you don't have to act that way. You can change your behavior, but you have to be willing to do it. But people will say narcissists don't change. But if you look at psychological journals, there's proof everywhere that narcissists do change. They do have success. They do make progress. You can't be cured of the disorder. He still struggles because he's aware. So an example would be narcissists would lie a lot. I don't know if either of you knows a narcissist. He used to lie all the time.
Now it can be, that was a lie.
Now he is aware.
Come back from it.
He doesn't want to lie. He wants to be transparent. And we've helped over 5,000 people, a lot of the men you work with are narcissistic, and a lot of the women that I work with have husbands that might not be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, but they still have strong traits. Mm-hmm. And so what we have done together is now all over the world helping people that initially were told or thought that narcissists cannot change. If you tell someone they can't change, of course they're not going to change. Yeah. We looked at it in a different way. And of course, I started trying to influence him with empathy and compassion, recognizing that he had false confidence, recognizing that he had huge insecurities. Rather than taking it personally, I mean, I took it personally at first for years, but eventually I realized it wasn't about me, it was about him. So through empathy and compassion, I was able to influence him into a gentler behavior. And then when it was safe, I approached him about the fact that I thought that he had narcissistic personality disorder. You don't tell a narcissist that they're a narcissist until they've received some healing. Wow. Once they've received some healing and they can see some of the things that they're doing that are painful, because they don't often see outside of themselves. And so when I treated him with empathy, when he was treating me in a cruel way and I came back with empathy, well, what is a narcissist going to do with that? It left you dumbfounded. Yeah,
that's right. Mm-hmm. When you start to work with a lot of people, you start to realize almost everybody presents many of the characteristics or behaviors in self-preservation mode in a fight. You start defending yourself and you start attacking. It's even if you read the comments on my social media, it's crazy. So it's not that everybody's a narcissist or everybody has some traits. That you just have to look at who you are as a person, how you communicate, and how you want to move things forward. What is the ultimate goal? Stop labeling everybody. That's like saying an alcoholic can't change.
So a quick question to that. Mm-hmm. When did you realize that you had those narcissistic tendencies? Were you very young, or how old were you when you found out you had this behavior?
Oh, this is only a few years ago. So,
Okay.
when we got together, I would be what you call a nice guy. That's what today's term would be, a simp or a cuck is the term that's thrown around.
Yeah.
Where I was doing everything for approval, for validation, but had no idea. Okay. And then, long story short, so just so you know, I was very emotionally, physically, and sexually abusive towards Kathryn for years. And then there was a restraining order. And so I started to try to learn to control emotions, started to try to go down a different path, and things were a lot better. But then when we got further in our journey, that's when, like Kathryn was saying, she felt safe enough where she could say, okay, you're doing great, but there's something I think we should talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I know Tess has a question. I just have to say to you both, congratulations on sharing this with us.
Yeah.
It is such a meaningful conversation, and I think it's going to help so many people. And thank you for being so candid,
So honest.
so honest. I think this is exactly what we need. And because we're going into Valentine's Day, where people just celebrate all of the romance,
Hoopla.
the hoopla,
Yeah, and
but yeah.
It's like a commercial, yet it's a culture thing, and like celebration of love.
Yes.
But do you want me to finish it?
No, go ahead,
Okay.
please.
So Valentine's Day is coming, and like we were talking about, it's like a commercial yet cultural celebration of love, and also marketing.
Yes.
It also symbolizes romance, but couples need more than that.
Yeah.
They need to work on their relationship. So what are some tips that are overlooked, simple tips that are overlooked that can bring back some, affection, love, spark, or however you want to name it, to the table?
There's so many ways, but I think you just nailed it, like hit the nail on the head. The amount of people that want something that I sell called romance hacks, and I just want to scream and just say, but romance doesn't do anything if you don't have the foundation. The very first thing that I'd suggest is you're going to go a lot further on Valentine's Day and every other day of the year is if you start to take responsibility for yourself and how you can create peace and safety in your own home.
Wow.
Because you don't have to be as abusive as I was to have a home that's not safe. This is where the disconnect comes in,
Wow.
And then you have to start to really think about conversation again. Almost everybody's trying to communicate, and they'll use Valentine's Day as a way to try to create that spark. When really, like, conversation, that's when you had dreams. Or think when you just start dating, same thing. Dreams, excitement, laughter, you're achieving things together. You don't care who interrupts each other. You're having sex all the time. It's crazy fun. That's conversation time. And everybody's trying to learn how to communicate and buy flowers and hope it's all good. Let's go for dinner. And they have nothing to talk about except their issues, and they're not even addressing the issues.
Wow.
That's how I'd start.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point.
And I love your stories, and I love your journeys, that you both can sit here and educate the world. Because Kathryn, as someone who experienced all of what, Cass, you've shared with us, what kept you going? Because a lot of people would have said, you know what? I have an abusive spouse. I'm going to take off and leave. Because you have a kid, right? A son.
We have 3 children. We have twin girls, they're 5, and then we have a boy that's 3. And so they were born during all of this. And it's a really good question, what kept me? Because in the beginning, and anyone who has experienced narcissistic traits knows that a narcissist will love bomb. But what I recognized is if they're capable of love bombing, they know exactly how to love you. Yeah. But what they do, because of their insecurities, they love bomb. And when they don't get the response that they think that they need, they pull it back. And that's where the rage could come out and the abuse could come out. But I believe that they mean this love. He's basically been dissected like a science experiment. Now we teach it all over the world, like you said. But I recognized that he knew how to love. So I was hanging on to that. And then as we moved forward in our marriage and our family journey, we did get pregnant twice, and intentionally. We have IVF babies. And so our girls, when they were about 1 year old, that's when we were pregnant with our third, they were a year and a half. I was at the end of my rope, and I thought, now is the time that I have to leave, because I felt like we were on a roller coaster, as you'll hear a lot of people say. I call it the crazy train. The crazy train can turn into a roller coaster, but if you see the crazy train coming, you can prevent the roller coaster. That's different. But we were on the crazy train. We were on the roller coaster, and I said, I can't do it anymore. But I was pregnant with my third. We had 1-year-old baby girl, beautiful twins. And I knew that I would not be able to prove in court emotional abuse and that he would be raising our children 50% of the time. So when we saved our marriage, I actually had no intention of healing our broken marriage. Wow. I hated him. I actually wished him dead every time he left the house because I didn't want him to come home. As sad as that is, I know that that's reality. A lot of women feel this way, but I wanted to save my children. I knew that they would not be emotionally safe if I wasn't there. And I hear some women say, I get torn apart on social media saying that, I can't believe you stayed with an abusive spouse. You're a terrible mother.
Oh, they still tell you to leave sometimes. When
and they still tell me
a post that
to
goes
leave.
20 million views and somebody will just rip Kathryn apart.
They can't believe that I stayed. And so, but here's the thing. You can leave and then your abusive spouse will get some custody of your children because emotional abuse is very difficult to prove. So he would have gotten 50%. You can stay and make sure that your children are protected and do nothing and keep coasting along in an abusive marriage, or you can do what I did. I chose to stay. It's a very privileged thing to say, to tell someone that they should leave because of all the different reasons that you might have to stay, financial reasons, your children, whatever it is. Everyone has a choice. I chose to stay because I was trying to protect my children. And I thought, I can't just keep living the way that I'm living. So I better figure out what I can change. Yeah. How can I make a change to be able to influence my husband? This is when I dug really deep with empathy and compassion. I worked on my own defensiveness. I worked on my own reactions. And I got my husband back. I fell back in love with him. I was able to rip down that shell. I got the love back. And it's beautiful. The byproduct of me trying to save my family.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible because I like what you just said, because your husband, he needed help as well. And you were there to save him.
But, I know a lot of people, like, I'll just say me, for example, it's a lot of work. I mean, I give my hats off to you, Kathryn. Yes. It is a lot of work. And some people just don't know how to, heal with the other person, how to drop their defensiveness. Like, I probably would be very defensive. And yeah, Cass, you wouldn't want somebody like me as a wife.
Well, so by the time Kathryn's describing this, there was years of me, because I had a restraining order. If I screwed up, I was going to jail.
Wow.
So now we're at this point where she's describing was the emotional stuff and the physical intimidation and the flipping out of the bed and screaming at her, throwing out of the house with an empty suitcase on her, all the big bad stuff, the sexual, bedroom stuff, all that was gone. And there was a point there where Kathryn, for years, she just did not trust the change, because it originally started that, how can I trust your changes? You just don't want to go to jail.
Yeah. Are you guys codependent on one another?
Well, not anymore, but there was a level for sure. As a narcissist, yes.
So because you asked that, I want to make sure that everybody watching understands this. The definition of codependency is valuing and prioritizing someone else's well-being at the sacrifice of your own. So a narcissist would falsely prioritize his or her partner at the sacrifice of themselves, but then they would react to that.
So we're giving to get.
The covert contract is what you would call that.
Exactly.
And then I was not codependent. I had actual confidence, but I developed codependency. So, like freeze, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawning dances the line of codependency, where you are trying to manage your partner's emotions, but you're not doing it in a healthy way. I can help him manage his emotions now in a healthy way. Back then, I was doing it out of fear. I was doing it because I was afraid that he was going to rage on me or whatever it was. So I developed some codependency. And I think, truthfully, that they're codependent relationships, but the codependent is not the narcissist. There would be some codependency there, but I believe it would be false.
Wow. Mm-hmm. It's such an inspirational story. It's a story that we've got to celebrate, because when I think about the statistics and I think about the odds of you guys making it, it's like, what kept you going? How long did it take for you to be at a place where you are now?
Oh, man. So, our timelines are totally different because of reality. Okay.
Yeah.
The restraining order was 8 years ago. And that's where I would say I made a lot of my changes. But knowing what I know now, like what I could put in my book, which is based off my course and my coaching and stuff, and that was like over the last 8 years to now.
7.
Right? Sorry, 7. And so That, when I thought things were great, that was the start of, so now we're like, what, 3 years in? It's no, 4.
So January 2018 was the restraining order. He was on good behavior because we had a restraining order.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was good behavior, but he was just influenced by the system to be better. And he was truly trying to be better. But this gave me breathing room. So in his first few years of healing, I didn't believe him. And then I started to lash out because he started to present a more safe atmosphere. I finally felt like
she could be more feminine, and she could also have her turn.
And I did. I had my turn. I was vicious to him, and we were vicious to each other. So the healing started when we had our peak of abuse, which was January 2018. By the end of 2020, that's when I knew the marriage was going to be over if I didn't do something about it. He was done too because I wasn't following.
Actually, at this point, I've been doing a lot of different things and trying a lot. I now know I was replacing negative with neutral. Like you can't yell all the time. That's negative. And then just stop yelling. Now you're just doing neutral. It's not positive. It's not changing anything.
It doesn't cancel out the yelling.
But I didn't realize all the work that I was doing. And so at some point, but I thought I did. I thought I was, and I still wasn't recognizing narcissism at this point. And so it was still a little entitlement. And I said to Kathryn, I'll leave you both. I'll leave Ryan as my other name. Yeah. I'll leave Ryan and I'll leave you. I'll leave you both. I understand if I screwed it up, but I'm not staying here.
So he changed his name when he healed in case he doesn't have 2 personalities anymore.
That's
he used to have like 7.
Is this all from your childhood? Do you think all of this came from experiencing trauma at a very young age?
Yeah, well, my parents were not great people. The whole family, narcissistic tendencies. My adoptive father is a full-on raging narcissist. My twin brother is. Knowing what I know now,
parents are perfect. They make mistakes because there's not a book that tells them how to be a great parent.
No, that's right. Well, there's a lot now.
But do they read them?
But,
do they follow it?
We try to teach people that stuff. We know other people that have who've learned from others, and so. But you're absolutely right, Tess. They don't, nor do they really want to. We think we'll just know. Husbands and wives get together. No, I'll stay home with the kids. Okay, great. I'll go to work, and then nobody could prepare you for the emotional roller coaster of the children.
So as marriage counselors then, do you have someone that you work with or on a regular basis to help you?
I have a team of women and he has a team of men. And so we both have someone within our own team that we can check in with. But we fight very infrequently, every few months max, because he talked about turnaround time. We have the skills to be able to navigate conflict, to be able to diffuse conflict. I always say I'm 97% there, but my 3% is vicious. You do not want to get into a war of words with my 3%, because when I'm acting out of the 3%, I'm not logical. You cannot rationalize with me. I am right. You're wrong. Don't talk to me. And so, but it's very infrequent. And for him, I think he struggles more on I don't know if it's a daily basis, but he's more in control.
I have to, because he has to think more. Like I have to be more aware, more proactive. So I definitely reach out to men that I've trained in my program, but we always have coaches, always have courses.
Okay, so say that you fight so much, and I'm hearing that you guys used to fight so much. What kind of therapy are you using to heal, to have empathy? What is this, CBT, or is this trauma therapy? CBT?
So nothing traditional worked. We've actually developed our own methods. I'm therapeutically trained in several different methods. He is a visionary. Between the two of us, we've come up with our own methods that we now teach. So,
what do you call that?
A big thank you. A big thing that I teach in the beginning is a heightened level of awareness of how you're reacting, because the way that women treat their husband, they would never treat anyone else that way. And if anyone saw the way a woman treats her husband, they would be blown away. And same with a man. I don't work with men. I do coach one call for the men, but with the women, I bring a heightened level of awareness of who they are right now. It's all about them. And from there, we can think about who they used to be, who they wanted to be. And then we have a 4-part system that we teach, the Morrow marriage method. I'll let you talk about it if you want to, but we've brought in a lot of different modalities, but what we do is ours. It's copyrighted as ours.
Yes, 100%. Because we're not actually therapists, just so you know.
We're coaches.
We're coaches.
I'm therapeutically trained, but I call myself a therapeutic coach because I'm trained in.
What do you call your therapy then? Do you have a name for it?
Well, it's all under the Morrow method, but we just have different things. Like when we talk about the love bombing, I have something I teach called the nice guy triangle, where it's 3-part triangle in each corner. So you have the love bomb, and then you have a pullback where you're feeling lonely and sad. And then you have the third guy who is in the third corner, who's just going to blame and attack. And if you're like me, you raged and you're abusive, but you might just point the finger defensively, that's called the nice guy triangle. I have the rejection ladder. Why are you initiating sex up here if we're not even having conversation down here? Climb the ladder. I teach STAT response, follow the acronym STAT. And when you follow the steps, you can respond and lead your partner away from the damage into the life that's good. Remember, replacing negative with positive, right? So we have just all these different things. What Kathryn was referencing a moment ago is we cannot stand boundaries. People are told to use boundaries.
Yep.
And if there's no respect to boundaries, nobody cares. One day I got super fed up and I just said, Kathryn, inspire, lead, ask, motivate with a boundary.
That's the 4-part system to the Morrow marriage method. And it would take a little bit too long probably to go through those 4 steps. But the idea is that if you lay a boundary, so let's say your husband is yelling at you and you say, you can't yell at me like that. Your husband doesn't give a shit. He does not care. When has that ever worked? If your husband or your wife talks to you and says, oh, you can't, and you say, you can't talk to me like that. You don't have to have the finger, but you can't talk to me like that. Does it ever work? No. It doesn't work. That's a boundary that's laid in an inefficient way. But because it's implemented under the premise of disconnection. You're not connected. When you're connected, then you can have a healthy boundary and your partner will respect your boundary and you can have a conversation that can lead to compromise, which is where problem solving comes in. But if you just lay a boundary, that's going to breed more disconnection. And if you're trying to get more connection, boundaries is not the way to go. Yeah. If you are unsafe, you can always put some guardrails in. You can always put some boundaries in. Most people are not actually unsafe physically. They're unsafe emotionally. And rather than laying a boundary and not letting your partner get their emotion out, you can validate the emotion and you can deal with the behavior later. So we do a lot of different things very differently than other people. I say something, for example, that people will tell you not to do, but I say go to bed angry. If you're angry with your partner and you try to talk to them, what happens? You fight and you fight longer and you say things that you regret. Go the F to bed if you are angry. But people will not tell you to do that. But I tell you to do it because we're all friends in the morning. In the morning, you can be fresh. You didn't say 10,000 things that you didn't mean. Nobody stormed out. Nobody threatened divorce. You're angry. Get a hold of your emotions. Make a plan to talk the next day.
Wow.
Go to bed angry.
I think this conversation, this episode is going to help so many people. I think the one thing that keeps coming to mind is I really admire you both for this partnership and the willingness to work it through rather than taking the easy route, which is divorce. Are there certain triggers, like when you think about holidays or certain things, like are there things that would trigger anything to come back, like Cass, for you specifically, like where you get really emotionally angry because, with the holidays, there's a lot of expectation or just anything in general?
For me at this stage, no. I mean, I still get insecure, for example, because that's who I was from the time I was born. But I know how to shut it off. Kathryn wouldn't even know most of the time. But there was a period prior where Kathryn would check in. Are you okay? Or I would say, hey, this made me feel a little bit insecure. I want you to know I'm good. But just in case something comes off with some tone or whatever, So there was a progression there. And I think if we could talk about triggers, probably like when Kathryn has to take a new intake from a new client, that could be very triggering.
Oh, I can sometimes get triggered by a client. Hardly any of my clients are as extreme as our situation, but when I get a client that hits home for me, it sometimes, very infrequently, I would say once every few months. Yeah. I have a client that it makes me cry when I read their intake. It makes me want to cry right now thinking about it. Because I just feel so much for that woman and I know what she's going through. I know how difficult it is. Most of the time, even though I've experienced all of these things that these women tell me, it doesn't trigger me. But once every few months, I get one that really, really hits home. But I think what triggers me with him is he has something called, I call it a resting smear face. So you know how they'll say women have a resting bitch face? I hope I'm allowed to say this on your show.
Of course, please.
Okay. I've dropped a couple of swear words on here.
That's fine.
But the resting bitch face. Right. If you're not smiling, I know I have a resting bitch face. So I try to smile a lot because I've been told that I'm very intimidating. I'm very confident. I have a big presence when I walk in the room. And if I don't smile, I'm scary, apparently. So he we call it a resting sneer face because
but it's my confused face.
And it's not resting. It's
angry
active
face. It's
active,
yes.
active sneer face.
Wow.
So I can get triggered if he has this face, and I need to I need to just check myself when I see it.
One more, I clap sometimes, right?
Oh,
and
yes.
if I'm like even just excited, I'm clapping with the kids. It can send like a
trigger me.
Chill, yeah.
Because he used to clap in my face, and
like right in her face.
Yes,
and just
wow.
And so
And I'm sure
when
that you said like stop clapping, and he didn't respect your boundaries, and he kept on clapping, right?
You're right.
You got it. You're learning.
Yeah, I am. I wanted to get back.
Wait, that's right. But because we're connected, so if you were to watch every episode of our podcast, Moral Marriage, which you should, then you can see sometimes he'll clap and I'll be like, oh, baby, you did it again. And he'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Because we're connected, I can say, oh, you clapped. Can you please stop clapping? Because we're connected. Mm-hmm. And I'll ask him in a respectful way. And he knows that it's a trigger for me. He does it by accident.
Okay,
So,
I have a question.
To really understand the answer to that question, though, is super cool. And people are loving this. What we do is what I'm doing with my men is I'm teaching them to slowly learn to laugh about the old them. So when we go out on dates, I mean, at least twice on a date, probably we'll be like, oh, imagine if Ryan was here right now. Because we just laugh about
Ryan's
that.
An
douche.
asshole.
Yeah. But, and it's so, at first it almost felt a little awkward when we started doing this. But
well, at least
now
you
it's
acknowledge
so
it.
natural and fun because we just know how far we've come. It's almost like a positive reminder, right? Instead of being the trigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a question with boundaries. Okay, so say like a couple is dating, well, they're starting to date, but you see a lot like Valentine's Day, they're going on their first date. What about people? The man usually craves
attention.
Not just attention. He wants intimacy because he's lacked it. Because he hasn't dated somebody in a long time. I think the woman doesn't care for it so much. So how do you have a happy medium with that? And the woman says, hey, whoa, I am not 20 anymore. I don't really care to, it's a lot of work. Like to act like you're 20 again and just to.
Are you thinking more public displays of affection?
No, I'm talking about intimacy, like, in bed and that kind of thing.
Okay, so the first thing that was a red flag for me is when you said it's Valentine's Day, they're going on their first date. I think you said if you are recognizing things like this on your first date, I don't think that you should pursue a relationship with someone where you have these vast differences. Now, flash forward 5 years into marriage when intimacy goes away and we're talking about a married couple, then you have to deal with that differently. So were you thinking more first date and you're recognizing that you have these differences on day one, or what?
Yeah.
Can you just give me a little bit more?
Yeah, like
I think women are generally like the same man. I don't know, just
I think most men crave all that
attention
and intimacy
more so than women.
Because women are becoming more independent. They have more things to deal with. They've got the kids to take care of. Men just want to feel loved. And this is how they think. They think, if I feel loved, I just don't want my hand held. I don't want you to just hold me. I crave that intimacy in bed. Is that normal? Or
it's men seek validation from sex, right? It's this simp, this cuck, or the nice guy, okay? And they're looking for intimacy far too fast because when they're connected sexually, and this is first date or this is however long you've been married, that's the way that they feel love. And they forget, like there isn't a man that comes to me that just wants to fuck, right? He wants to cuddle. He wants to talk. He wants to be connected. He wants to laugh. He wants to feel like he belongs again. And women often are in the same boat. And so I think to really answer your question, we go down to core values. I mean, it sounds to me like that's not necessarily a massive priority to you. On the flip side is maybe you want to get more connected first, and maybe you just have to lay down. That's a fair place to lay a boundary if it's early in the dating stage. Mm-hmm. Right.
And when you said, is that normal? So yes, it is normal for men to want it more than women. So let's use us as an example. In the beginning, everybody's hot and heavy, right? And then that wears off. The emotional abuse comes in. There's so many things. Children, like you said, we're managing the household. There's so many things that come into it. So his desire for intimacy is a lot higher than mine. But I have a desire to be with my husband, to satisfy my husband, to be his wife. And so there has to be a level of compromise. Compromise doesn't mean sacrificing everything that you want for your partner. Compromise means each person sacrifices. It doesn't mean that you sacrifice equally. The more emotionally mature person is always going to sacrifice more, because then you're going to be, you go back to that Morrow marriage method, inspire, lead, ask, and motivate. In the inspire stage, you're looking to influence your partner. Once you get through the Morrow marriage method and your partner, you're more like partners and you're not dragging, you're not influencing, you're not pushing, you're actually walking side by side. Now your partner, I'm using you as the least emotionally mature in this example. If I'm more emotionally mature, I need to compromise more. As I influence him and he's coming along with me, then we compromise a little closer to 50-50, but then everybody's going to have a bad day. So when it comes to intimacy, I think women do need to recognize your husband is a man. You didn't marry a woman, you married a man, and men in general, this is just general, it's not everybody, have a higher sex drive than women and different levels of desire. So me as a wife, I could go without sex a lot longer than he could, but I compromise and I give him more sex than I would like to have, but he compromises. Maybe we have more quickies. He would like to have more marathons, but he knows that that's not going to happen. And so we make sure that we compromise with each other.
Yeah.
You know, it takes 4 minutes to have a quickie, ladies. It doesn't mean that you have to have all quickies, but if your husband needs to connect with you, which he does, it takes me no effort to have my husband feel loved and to have us connect. And then when we're connected, guess what? That unlocks emotional intimacy for me, because it is true that men need physical intimacy to really express themselves fully emotionally.
Wow.
But there's steps. There's so many steps to take, you know, starting from the first date that you're talking about and going all the way through the relationship, especially if you're learning before, if it is a new relationship like you're describing, or if you have to undo damage, you know, I mean, women, for example, often get into checking sex off the to-do list, managing emotions because you feel sorry for your pouty husband.
Or you're afraid of, so you're managing his emotions. That's like I talked about earlier, managing his emotions in an unhealthy way. Now I can help him manage, and I used to do that with physical intimacy.
Well,
right? It's common.
Cass and Kathryn, we're down to the last 2 minutes. It's gone by so quickly.
Yeah.
So the last question is, if you both could have dinner with 3 people dead or alive, who would it be and why? I like the way you look.
Trump. Jesus, obviously. Jesus first. Rewind. Jesus, Trump, and who else?
Yeah, I'd like to meet Jordan Peterson, but I know you want to meet the Gottmans.
Oh, I'd like to meet the Gottmans.
Yeah.
I think they'd be so proud of the way that I've bastardized their methods.
I think this has been such an inspirational conversation. I mean, your journeys, I think, it's so inspirational to hear your stories of the resiliency and how you both navigated this complex. I mean, it's fantastic. I am so glad we had an opportunity to chat with them.
Yeah, this has been so. I love therapy, by the way, and I just I've never experienced anything the way you guys approach therapy. So I'm just kind of in awe.
I mean, it's
Thank
fantastic.
You for teaching us.
Thank you, Cass, and thank you, Kathryn. This episode is going to air on the Discovery Pod with Eve's YouTube channel on February 13th, because it's usually on Thursdays, so the day before Valentine's Day. Thank you both for sharing such insight and wisdom.
Happy Valentine's Day, guys.
Happy Valentine's Day to you both. Roger Neal, you're out there. Thank you. Tony Sweet, thank you. Again, Cass, Kathryn, thank you. Anything else that you guys are working on that you would like our audiences to know about?
Yeah, you bet. If any of you are looking for help and just to see what we offer, and we give so much free stuff away because so many people need support, go.morrowmarriage.com. That's go.morrowmarriage.com.
And of course, we've got your Instagram. Any other, are you on Facebook or?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Awesome. And I have to thank Jules. Jules is the person who connected Kathryn and I. Jules, love you. Thank you so much for the intro. This has been very inspirational. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for watching this very inspirational episode. Happy Valentine's Day. Wishing you love.
Thank you.
Love, success.
Love, happiness, and health.
And I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Tess, for hosting with me. Again, ladies and gentlemen, please watch this inspirational episode with Cass and Kathryn on the Discovery Pod with Eve's YouTube channel, or you could listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Watch us every Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific time. You never know who's going to stop by. Happy Valentine's Day, and wishing you happiness and success. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Cass. Bye, Kathryn. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.